Welcome, lost souls, to today's Explainer of Existence. Go ahead and take a seat, because today I'm putting on my weary philosopher's hat to guide us through a fascinatingly grim, dark, gothic fable. We're going to treat this as a deep dive lecture on existentialism and cosmic nihilism, wrapped inside the story of a man trapped in a metropolis of absolute suffocating perfection. So let's just jump right into this meticulously constructed nightmare of his own making and see what it actually reveals about our own deepest, darkest fears.
We have to start with this stark, unavoidable existential law. Existence precedes essence. Basically, this means we are literally condemned to be free. We are forced to construct our own meaning through continuous, agonizing action. But, you see, our protagonist in this fable? He was completely paralyzed by the dread of this radical freedom. He desperately tried to reverse this cosmic law, just to escape the terrifying responsibility of having to make future choices.
That brings us to part 1, the illusion of stasis. Let's look at his initial stagnation.
He lived inside this perfectly curated room, and it was decorated entirely with captured memories. He called this collection his intellectual salvage. Now, the psychological mechanism at play here is just wildly fascinating. He honestly believed that by extracting the vibrant, chaotic stories of his youth and framing them under cold, impenetrable glass, almost like drying out pressed flowers, he could possess a moment completely. He thought this would somehow prevent it from ever slipping away or changing. He was actively trying to turn his fluid, ongoing life into a fixed, dead object.
This salvage was basically a monument to existential cowardice. I mean, he sought to become a god of his own small interior world. By hoarding the infinite within the finite boundaries of his glass frames, he was desperately seeking the comfort of a defined essence. He wanted an unchanging identity that would protect him from the chaotic, messy demands of actually living.
Moving on to part 2, Tyranny of the Herd.
Because guess what? Isolation did not bring divinity. It brought a bitter, cynical resentment toward the neighbors right outside his window. This brilliantly illustrates the choice he made. He could have chosen the chaos of living. The pain of becoming, the unpredictable, raw growth happening out in the streets. Instead, he chose the sterile lead of mortality. He literally traded the pain of becoming for a perfectly flat, horizontal line of identical days. He did this to ensure that absolutely nothing in his life could ever surprise, challenge, or threaten him.
He would sit there, guarding his threshold with this biting envy, casting an evil eye down upon the living. He'd sneer at the streets, labeling their joyous struggles and raw growth as a quote-unquote childish sickness. He used this bitter, cynical lens to reduce their passion to a dull hum. Why? Because their vital, chaotic action was a direct, terrifying reflection of his own stagnation.
So let's do a deep dive here in part 3, Spiritual Entropy.
We have to examine the physical and spiritual deterioration of his soul inside that impenetrable room. The crucial point here is the foundational philosophical reality of cosmic nihilism. This is the terrifying truth that the universe is fundamentally indifferent, and objective meaning simply does not exist. Because of this absolute cosmic law, his attempt to hoard the infinite was inherently doomed to fail from the start. You just cannot freeze time or hoard meaning in a universe that offers no objective anchor to hold on to it.
Let's actually look at the anatomy of how this decay builds. Step 1, he tries to hoard the infinite within the finite. Step 2, the universe's total indifference refuses to sustain this artificial permanence. Which leads to step 3, the inevitable result. Without objective meaning to anchor them, the brilliant memories he extracted just dry up. The vibrant stars of his youth inevitably crumble into gray powder.
And this gray powder, it's the suffocating dust of spiritual entropy. It perfectly mirrors the lifelessness of the cosmic void itself, slowly covering his sterile world in the physical remnants of his existential cowardice. His desperate attempt to preserve life literally only accelerated its decay.
Which brings us to part 4, a case study of the tomb.
We really need to clinically examine the architecture of this living death he built for himself. His physical actions were direct manifestations of symbolic cowardice. Framing memories in glass was his way of reversing essence. Curating identical days? That was a voluntary submission to the ultimate truth of the void. His obsession with total equality of experience was actually an anchor, keeping his spirit entirely submerged in the mud just so he wouldn't have to look into the unpredictable abyss.
To sum up this self-made tomb, he genuinely believed he was above the masses, yet he remained completely shackled to herd psychology through his own consuming deep resentment. He actively chose a living death over the terrifying continuous action required to truly exist because he was paralyzed by the dread of radical freedom.
But as we know, stasis cannot last forever in a decaying room. The dust settles, the air gets stale, and we hit part 5, the agony of awakening.
Because eventually, the illusion shatters. One day, he looked in the mirror, and in that reflection, the brutal, unavoidable realization of his own self-destruction finally took hold. The walls of his little interior worlds completely collapsed inward.
He saw not a man, but a shadow. He suddenly recognized that he was merely the guardian of his own stagnation, literally a ghost haunting a graveyard of his own making. The intellectual salvage hadn't saved him at all, it had buried him. To escape this suffocating perfection, he realized he had to do the one thing he feared most. He had to stop holding on. He would have to violently shatter the impenetrable glass of his frames, completely destroying the fixed identity he'd been cowering behind. He had to accept the destruction of his perfect order and forcefully perform a Nietzschean grave dance right over the parts of himself that were already dead and turned to dust.
And that violent ascension paves the way for Part 6, the spirit of becoming.
This is the only true response to a meaningless universe. By consciously choosing to step into the dark, chaotic unknown, he finally allows the spirit of becoming to sweep through his room and burn the dust away. He accepts that meaning is never possessed. It can't be framed under glass. It has to be continuously, painfully forged through raw, unpolished action right up until the void finally reclaims him.
And so, as this dark fable comes to a close, I want to leave you lost souls with a question to ponder as you look at your own lives before the void reclaims us all. Think about it. What vibrant memories are you framing under glass right now to avoid the terrifying abyss of your own radical freedom? Are you actually out there forging meaning in the dark, or are you just sitting in a curated room, gathering dust? Thank you for exploring this explainer with me. I'll see you in the next one.